This is Cassandra Williams, Educational Innovation 360. This is Teacher Tips. Today we're talking about the first day of school at first grade. So it's not only about like one day preparation, it's about multiple days, multiple months, and even thinking about what is the content that we had last year if you are a veteran teacher. But if you're a first year teacher, it's a lot to think about, like scheduling, what dots do I need to put on the floor to make sure the students are, walking in, how can I keep people safe, especially at the end of the day. So hopefully you enjoy. Now you may think that teachers are planning maybe the day or the day before, but there's unseen work and that happens during the summer. So there's a lot of misconceptions, like summer is the off time for a teacher, but there are a lot of teachers that are working like July and August, even thinking about like lesson plans, how they're going to set up their classrooms. What does the prep look like? How does the downtime? What is name tags, right? All these things are components that need to happen kind of during the summer. And so we know that the average teacher works at least 54 hours per week, and at least 46% of that is spent on just teaching. So there's a hidden labor behind this first day just to make sure that the first day goes smooth, and sometimes it does not go as smooth. So really thinking about, even though the summers are off, there's summer planning and preparation happening for all teachers. So many first grade teachers are looking to create a welcome environment, right? Not thinking about the color scheme, how do we shape our students' confidence, how do we make sure we're warm, how do we have a calming corner, right? How do we label our desks, how do we label the cubbies, what are we doing for homework, how do we make sure people are oriented, they know which way to walk, they know what to do when they're feeling overwhelmed, right? These are personal touches that teachers use to welcome first day. Something as simple as like the beginning day where we have to take attendance, right? Thinking of what a first grade teacher has to prepare for her to get a couple of minutes to take attendance. So think of all these things, setting up early, what are the early activities, what are the scaffolds that need to take place before they can use the skinny pencils that are norms, thinking about the fat pencils, or thinking about if they got skinny pencils, what's the rubber band method we need to use. And so I like to say that, first grade, there's such a love for teachers that are teaching kinder and first grade. And so that is, I say, the foundation of, beginning school. Okay, so we think about the first morning is critical. And so teachers are greeting students at the door, trying to know them by name, set them up with their supplies, and trying to have calming activities so they don't get overwhelmed, whether there's a morning meeting, but really thinking about what are the classroom procedures, how do we push in a chair, what do we need to do to walk in the hallway, how do you join somebody on the carpet, do I call all of them, do I call them one at a time? A colleague, Kathleen Reed, says, it's $1 million minute investment to this moment, and everything pays off then. So what are you doing to ensure that you have door greetings? Like, are you shaking hands? Are you giving hugs? What does that look like? What are your arrival activities? Do they come? Do they sit on the carpet? Do they wait? Do they sing? What are they doing to while you're taking attendance? How do you keep students engaged? And then thinking about when you're meeting on the carpet, what does that look like? How do we what is the expectations for that? Even like feelings, what do you do when students get in their emotions? And then always practicing procedure. Usually the first day is not a lot of content, but it is what are the routines and procedures in place, and just practicing perfect some of the things that need to happen in school. So I want to say this works for every single classroom. Building relationships is a foundation of success. Students feel seen and they feel valued. Their emotional engagement increases. Teachers using games, names, seating, charts, all of it to communicate effectively. So thinking of what do we need to do for student connections, the charts, knowing names, understanding how students get home that day. And this is kind of tricky because usually second on, they can kind of articulate that. But sometimes at first in kindergarten, we're struggling for names, name tags, and, saying, hey, how did you get here? How are you going home? And confirming with families. But again, all that goes down to trust. And then the family connection. Have you had early communication with families to reduce parents' anxiety and students' anxiety? What does it look like for after school care? Or even thinking about how can parents check with you during the day. So routines and procedures are very important. Routines help lower the anxiety. If you know what is going to happen every day, students can have this expectation and they can pretty much run the classroom without you. So that's why routines matter. Really thinking of how they hang up their backpacks, what does the bathroom break look like, how do they line up in the hallway, what is the expectation, where do they sit on the carpet from teachers actually putting stickers on the carpet so students sit their pockets on the stickers, so they know where they sit, whether the lunch routine procedure, what happens in emergency. All these are crucial to get in place day one. Even hand signals and gestures for what happens when students have to use the bathroom or need to get a drink of water, the arrival time, the dismissal time, which bus you get on, when do I have to wait, when can I go home, when can I take a nap or not, right? So really thinking of all these components on day one is a lot to consider. So this is where I see a lot of teachers, first grade teachers, struggle, and this is where kind of our support comes in, is really looking at how much time you have with students. We know a first grader's attention span is roughly about 6 minutes. I like to say it's their age. It used to be double their age. So if they were 6, you got 12 minutes to get your life together. But now I really think with access to technology and just there is not much downtime. So thinking of what your transition looks like within the 6 minutes to make a different idea or a different transition. And so when you have any downtime, it can be risky or really tricky, because any downtime allows for students to do whatever, right? If they don't have anything to do. So I always think it's about classroom management, and if you don't want to have classroom management nightmare, you don't want to have much downtime. So over planning is important. Think about every transition, pinpoint every piece of materials and backup materials. What happens when technology doesn't work? Backup worksheets if you need. If you don't have enough worksheets for that activity, think about rehearsing your welcome speech, rehearsing your presentation, and then when they arrive, how do you troubleshoot everything before students arrive, right? And so thinking about the typical arrival minutes, when a teacher manages multiple things simultaneously, even the calls on the phone, like what happens, and thinking about your transitions. And we want to make sure we're increasing instructional time, but really being able to plan down to the minute, you will be successful. So it's something great to say that there are teams and there are support systems. Well, but some schools don't have coaches. That's where we come in. We are here to help your teachers and support. I know one of the struggles with teachers is sometimes they don't have a collaboration support system. But what we have realized is nobody does this alone. Success on the first day is all about collaboration. So think about your components that you have in place, whether you have mentorship, you are sharing resources, so you're not making all the copies, you are working together as a team. There's PLCs, collaborative planning for your team, and then you take time to take care of yourself. So not only you're thinking about having a peer network, but you're also talking about self-care routines that you have in place before the year begins. So how are you scheduling a little time? How are you actually taking your lunch? How are you actually taking your own bathroom breaks, right? And that has to be intentional, right? We want you to make sure you come back year to year and you are happy, you're successful, and we don't want you to burn out. So making sure you take a little time for yourself throughout the day is crucial. So there is first day logistic challenges. I was working with a teacher and she called and she said, I lost a kid. And so that is the worst thing you want to hear. But I think she was having more anxiety than the principal who was looking at the cameras, right? So really thinking of how is your dismissal? Have you checked in with families to kind of double check their dismissal? Where are the times that you are at high stress? Because you can definitely feel your heart beating, you're sweating, right? And thinking of how you can rearrange some of those times. Many say at the end of the day, this is where sometimes things get real, where teachers are kind of juggling students, figuring out last minute changes. Families, they change their dismissal plans at the last minute. But like I said, the ultimate goal is to get everyone home safely. Now, we did work with that teacher and she, found a better way of systematically putting students on buses and double checking, having a true connection with families. But we did find out that the communication dropped between the office getting the note and the teacher receiving the information, right? So the student went on the bus and the parent wanted to pick them up that day. So we did find that the student did go on the bus and the student eventually came back to the school and then was safely at home. But I think the teacher had so much anxiety and was crying on the phone, but we assured her everything was okay, he was safe, especially if he got on the bus, we always bring students back. So really thinking of that, and again, community, partnerships, networks with other colleagues, and self-care is important. We all know it's a reward. Teachers love first grade. They love their babies. And, besides all the things, right, Besides the exhaustion, the chaos, and kind of the never ending, all the details with the curriculum. Like, we haven't even dove into the curriculum and all the components that, and then the planning. We haven't even talked about that, but there's reward. There is a shining sun at the end of the rainbow, right? Thinking of, there's a greater reward, seeing the students happy, having them come back and love on you, having them go from non-readers to readers, thinking about all the work that you put in, them coming back and just being grateful for being in your classroom, wanting to see you year after year. But remember, thinking that this does set the tone for our students to be successful. So I think for students, when they leave day one feeling safe, knowing that they're excited to return and come back the next day, you won. For teachers that have experience or that may not, the satisfaction is months of things finally coming together, or systems being so succinct that students can run the classroom without you with the sub, because they automatically know what comes next, know what to do, they know their jobs, they know their roles, they know where to sit on the carpet, they know how to clean out their desks, they know how to put up the chairs, right? All these components are already in place, and you should feel thankful that you have put all these systems in place so your students can do well. I hope these tips help. If you have any questions or you want to learn more, DM me. Talk to you later. Bye.